Good evening, leaders. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, please just drop a message in the chat box. Good evening, everyone. Oh, great. Tolu Lopez says he can hear me. Great. Welcome to the second session of Head Start 2022. Who is excited? Let me see your excitement in the chat box, please. We had the first session. How was it for you? Bring it on, bring it on. Okay. Can you bring on more excitement? I need to know if you are ready for the second session. Head Start 2022 is here, gaining traction. And our second speaker is ready. Okay, someone says absolutely expository. That's great. Okay, great. Okay. So now we'll be listening to our speaker's bio. Once that is done, he would begin the session.
Moyo Mamora is a real estate entrepreneur and finance professional with 17 plus years of investment experience. He's a purpose-driven leader who's enthusiastic about empowering people to create wealth while inspiring the pursuit of life to the fullest potential. Moyo is a vice president in International's healthcare M&A group. He earned a bachelor's degree in computer engineering from the University of Oklahoma, a master's in finance from DePaul University, and an MBA from Kellogg Northwestern University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Moyo Mamora.
Everyone, hope everyone is.
Welcome, sir.
Hey, hello, good evening. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okie dokie. All right, is that better? I think it is. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, great. Well, good evening, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Moyo Mamora here. It's a pleasure to be with you all this evening to share a little bit today about wealth creation and how your behavior impacts your ability to create wealth. One of the first things that I did as I thought through what it is that I would be speaking today was to actually look up what it means, what behavior actually means. And here's what I found, right? It's the way in which we respond to stimulus in the environment, right? And that's very instructive as we think about wealth, you see, because I think for the most part, every single one of us wants a slightly better life than where it is that we're at today. But the question is, if that's not happened for the great majority of people, then what's wrong? And I think the answer to that question is really found in understanding what behavior is all about, right? So in life, as you know, we are surrounded with a lot of stimuli, things that come in through your ears, things that you hear, things that people talk about around you, things that you're thinking about, whether it is conscious or unconscious. All of this information is coming into you, and we are unconsciously, for the most part, probably about 80% of the way, making decisions around these different things that we're hearing, and we're acting and responding to these different things that we're hearing, seeing, just interpreting the world around us. And these things ultimately determine the outcome of our life. These things ultimately determine how we make decisions. So often you find yourself making a decision that gets you into a certain position in life. And maybe you're asking yourself, well, how did I get there? How did all my money, finish up? How come I'm not making progress in life? And the problem oftentimes is because we haven't gotten to a place where, we are very conscious about what it is that we're thinking about, what it is that we're doing. Now, so the discussion today is really going to be centered around self-awareness. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, because often in our generation today, you see it a lot in social media. There's a lot of talk about self-love, self-care, self-this. And that's not what I'm really talking about. This is not an invitation to be selfish and to be self-centered, which ultimately would make you egocentric and an egotist and a proud person. But it's saying for you to get to a point where you're consciously evaluating what's the stimulus around me, what's impacting the way I think, what's impacting the way I make decisions, right? And based off of all of that, how am I interpreting this information? How am I responding to this information? Is my response to this information, or this information that's before me, is it helping me get to where I ultimately need to get to in life? And that's ultimately what you should be thinking about as I talk about self-awareness today, and mastery of behavior as it pertains to wealth creation. If we look at the investment framework, for example, now this isn't focused on investing per se, but if I wanted to look at some sort of a framework to evaluate how people behave and how people respond to things and to situations, let's think about investments, right? Investment requires I take funds today, put it somewhere that produces results in the future, and it yields a profit for me over time. It means that I'm going to deny myself of something today so I can reap a future benefit in the future. And what a lot of people have found that have studied this is that there are two major sources of stimuli for investment and how people behave in investment markets, one being fear and the other being greed. So those are like the two powerful emotions that work in people as they think about investment. So number one, people many times are afraid to take risk, so therefore they stay away and don't invest. Or you see people who are over afraid of the risk that they have taken, and so as a result of that, they make poor decisions that could have turned out right. And this kind of comes into this idea of oftentimes we as human beings, so behavioral psychologists have found out that human beings tend to overweight a loss than the benefit of a gain, or we place twice as much value on pain than gain. So meaning in dollar terms, that if I lose $1, it requires that I make $2 to feel equal in the opposite direction of the loss. Do you understand what that means? And you see, from a decision decision-making standpoint, that's not a rational way to think. But I tell many people on the journey towards investment and wealth creation that mathematics and logic usually is not the problem, because oftentimes people can do the math, to get them the money or the wealth or the magnitude of finances that they need at any point in time. But the problem is behavior oftentimes is the issue. Let's talk about greed a little bit. Greed is something that's very pervasive as well. It's this idea that I can get more. There's always a little bit more that I can get. So as a result of that, people's decision-making abilities then become very distorted because they're chasing after something, they're constantly following the money, they feel like they can get more, but they're not being very rational about the benefits that they have received so far and how they can manage the risks that they have so far and how they can use what they've gotten so far, to make additional progress in life. And also a part of this, I think, is this idea about rent-seeking behavior. And what do I mean by rent-seeking behavior? It's the idea that many times people feel you can get something for nothing, right? It's like, and from an investment standpoint, it is the expectation that you can get a reward that is far above the risk that you're taking. So people hear about things that, oh, look, if you put your money into this, you're going to make, 5 times. You have to ask yourself the question, what's the basis of being able to make 5 times my money in any investment in a certain period? And many people are not asking these questions, but then they hear the returns, their eyes light up, and then they want to jump into that, right? Or, they're looking for opportunities where they can make money without actually putting any effort, adding any value, making any contribution to society or to a customer base, etc. These attitudes and these are behaviors that if you have them on the inside of you, now at a basic level, every human being is susceptible to these behavioral flaws, every single one of us. Now, but the extent to which you feed it determines the extent to which it grows. But the extent to which you tame it, determines the extent to which you actually prosper and are more successful in life. So, going back to another point that I made here is that oftentimes I have found that mathematics in wealth creation is not the problem. Behavior oftentimes is the problem in wealth creation. And what I mean by that, so I live in the United States of America, and I'll use the United States as the framework for my discussion. So, in the US, for example, when a person is a student in school, this person is probably making far below the minimum wage. This person doesn't have a lot of resources, but they do well, they do okay, right? Maybe they're making for, if I use dollar terms, and don't be staggered by the numbers, just focus on what I'm saying. Maybe their all-in compensation in a year is $20,000 or $15,000, right? So they're surviving. I mean, granted, other expenses may have been paid for, etc., but maybe their boarding expenses and living expenses, call it $20,000, $25,000 a year. They go through a college experience, they do okay, they have a decent time, they have a good time. I mean, they're not able to live a luxurious life as they'd like. But then this person graduates from college, starts making $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year as a base compensation. Maybe they're an engineer and they get a good job and they're making 70 grand a year. What I find oftentimes is that this person, after about a year or 2 years, this person is strapped in debt, right? And you got to ask yourself the question, how does a person who was living and surviving on $20,000, $30,000 a year come out of college, starts making 3 times that, but still ends up, in significant amount of debt at the end of the year? Now, for that person has lived 4 years, a very frugal life, right? But then comes out, has more money, but then they don't have a savings account. They don't have a retirement account built up. Instead, they have a negative net worth, right? The problem oftentimes is behavior. It's these factors we talked about. It's greed. It's the lack of discipline. It's no delayed gratification. We're all prone to these problems, right? So this is not an indictment on any one person at all. But I said something about, if we're talking about behavior and we're talking about mastery, then self-awareness is very, very important, right? So it starts with just evaluating, why does this happen? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to people around me? If I'm seeing a pattern, all right, then I need to be able to pause and observe and then ask myself, then what is it that they're doing wrong? And then how should I be thinking about these things differently? And that's very important. So you take that. Here's another example, right? There are examples of people. Every time I speak to people, I would ask in a room, I'd say, how many people know someone, in your circle who has been working for 20, 30 years? And almost everyone's hands goes up in that room. Doesn't matter how many people are in the room. Then I ask another question. I say, how many of you know someone of this group of people who've been working for 30 years? How many of you know someone who you can say confidently, this person has at least $2 million in retirement savings? Then the number of hands goes down significantly. And then all of a sudden, it's like maybe 10% of the room. Now, you think about that, and I did the math. Unfortunately, I don't have it handy, but I have done the math oftentimes. Like if you take an average wage earner, meaning this is not a rich person, this is a person with an average level of education, doing an average job, you take this person and you have this person invest or put aside very basic, about 10 to 20% of their income, set it aside every single year in an investment vehicle that's paying about 10% a year. And ideally, this person in about 30 years after working should have about $1.72 plus million and saved up in this account. And this assumes that this person's income doesn't change. It stays at the same average minimum wage, just barely increasing with inflation. So they're not upskilled, they've not reskilled, they're not getting any promotions, just average. And they just continue that lifestyle. And we see in here that person would have about $2 million or so saved. So if the math works out that way, we have to ask ourselves an honest question as to why is it that people, after so many years, aren't necessarily seeing these types of results. And again, it goes back to this issue of behavior, right? How do we behave? What's our relationship with money? What's our relationship with how we think about wealth creation? What's our thinking? What belief systems do we have? Because when we start evaluating these belief systems, when we start thinking about these things, then it helps us to get to that place where we can really start making adjustments and thinking about what behaviors we actually need to be mastering so that we can ultimately create the wealth that we'd like to create. Now, I understand that I'm talking to a group of people. So this isn't a conversation that's necessarily about, the United States and investing in the United States, because everything I'm speaking about right now, it's a principle that would work for you if you just listen and open up your hearts to what it is that I'm sharing with you. Now, let's talk about wealth, right? When I think about wealth, right, the journey to creating wealth always starts with you, right? Like I said, right, it starts with your personal development. It starts with your self-awareness. It starts with your understanding and you being intentional as a person as it relates to the goals that you've set for yourself or the outcome that you so desire in life. And what is wealth for me? Wealth for me is beyond just funds that you can accumulate or just money that you can accumulate, right? Because without that, if it's really just about that, then life really is meaningless. And I believe that life has a bigger meaning, life has a bigger purpose, and every human being has been created with a unique purpose that fits within an overarching purpose, right? And that goal is ultimately about elevating the dignity of humanity, creating flourishing communities around us, right? And wealth creation then becomes a tool for us to actually effectively, or I should say financial freedom becomes a tool for us to effectively fulfill this purpose in life. And for me, my definition, I define wealth as that intersection between purposeful living and financial freedom. So financial freedom gives me the ability, gives me the resources, gives me the choices, gives me the options with my time. And living a purposeful life actually brings me the fulfillment. And when I'm in that place where I'm financially free and I have choices, I have options, I have resources that back me, and then I'm living a purposeful life, I'm making impact in my community, I'm creating a flourishing society around me, I am a net benefit to my community, to the people around me, etc. I can then look back and I can say I have lived a truly wealthy life, a truly powerful life, right? And that's my encouragement to you all today as you think about this journey towards wealth creation, right? That it's not just about how much I can get so I can buy a bigger car, so I can take a picture on social media and have a nice flex, pose in front of that Lamborghini, have a nice pour champagne, crystal, ace of spades, whatever it is. It's beyond that. It's about impact. It's about transforming humanity, and it's about ultimately making society a better place. So wealth creation is a huge responsibility. And I want to encourage you to think about it very differently if you've had a mindset that's all about just getting money for yourself and for your family. I think life is much more than your smaller family. I think you should think about the world as your family. You should think about improving the lifestyle and the condition of the entire world. And then you're really living a life that's purposeful and ultimately creating wealth that way. So again, it starts with you. It starts with your individual growth. It starts with your personal development. And that's where the journey of wealth creation starts. Now, let me speak to people here because, there are many paths as I think about what it is that we're talking about today. You could be working wherever you are in West Africa, in Africa, in the UK, in the United States, and that can be a path to your wealth creation. Number two, you might be in a situation where the environment, say, for example, lots of country in Africa, say, for example, Nigeria, where you don't necessarily have employment opportunities, but maybe that's the opportunity for you to be enterprising, right? Because your framework for how you're thinking about wealth is different, right? You're not looking to get something, you're looking to add value and in exchange get something, right? Or you may currently have a business, may currently be running a business right now, and maybe saying to yourself that, you know what, how do I expand the scope of what it is that I'm doing right now? And I'm saying that there are many paths. I'll give you an example, and it's personal here, right? So I have seen personally my income in the last 10 years has gone up, easily 5 times. Actually, I take that back, 6 times from where it was 10 years ago. And so every year it's consistently increasing. And I'm really grateful to God for that, because I know it's not my own doing. I know I've been exposed to the right type of information, and it's really just has been a product of my personal growth. And it's important for you to understand that, right? Because if someone gave you $1 million today, you better become a millionaire pretty soon, right? Because it's not the $1 million that's put in your hand that makes you a millionaire. It's the fact of, are you as an individual a millionaire? Now think about that, because it's very important, because oftentimes people are looking to get money. People are chasing after the money. People are chasing after the gold, the dollar, the naira, whatever it is. That's what people are focusing on. But people aren't focusing on developing themselves so they have the capacity to actually handle the resources that they're changing. So you should pursue those things. You should pursue increase in those areas, but not at the expense or at the detriment of your own personal growth. See, because if I give you $1 million today, if you don't become a millionaire, it's going to all go away. If you take, someone said it this way, that if I take all the wealth in the world and I equally distribute it, and this is sort of one of the reasons why this socialist ideas doesn't work. If you equally distribute all the wealth across every single human being on the planet, somehow all the money still ends up in the same group of people who control the wealth at the beginning. So you need to understand that it's not the environment that's the issue. It's not who's giving you the opportunity that's the issue. The main thing that you have to focus on, now, all of those things may be contributing factors, right? They may make it difficult. They may be introducing some level of limitation in your pursuit, etc. However, what you need to understand is that your real pursuit here should be growth. Because if I pursue growth, if I pursue development, if I pursue the expansion of my capacity as an individual, then very, very likely I can attract those things. Now, I want to say something, right? Because to an extent, when I talk about growth, when I talk about development, when I talk about learning, oftentimes what happens is many people say, well, I've been learning, I've taken all these classes, and some people are just addicted towards like seminars and webinars and classes and things like that. And oftentimes they forget that it's not about taking all these classes. When we're talking about growth, think about a person who's going to the gym, right? I can watch a lot of videos about how to work out, but if I actually don't go out there and put some resistance on my muscles, then my muscles aren't growing. And many times when we sit in these different lectures, we sit in these environments where we're learning, we're taking books, etc., we're reading all of those things, it's not enough to just have these information so that we can talk about it. and you can create a new Instagram post about these things. It's about, I've heard these things, and can I go out and can I actually practice these things? If I'm doing these things, or if I've heard, many books, many lectures, many teachers, many coaches tell me all these different things, then there has to be some element of truth there. So if it's not working for me, then maybe I'm not working it right. Same thing. If I'm going out to the gym, the very first day I go out to the gym, I may not be able to move very heavy weights, but I would start. But I'm going to start moving weights. And when I do that, everything is going to be sore. Everything's going to hurt. My body is going to be painful. And, so growth comes with pain. So likewise, when you take these ideas, you take all these things that you've been taught, you've been learned, you're going to go out there and you're going to experience difficulty. You're going to experience challenges. It's going to be tough. You're going to be like, man, is it really worth all of this? Now, it's very, very important that you remember this. The human being has a natural desire to avoid pain. It's the exact reason why a lot of people don't continue a workout regimen. They start out, they do it, it feels good, they experience the pain, and they're like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that's the exact same thing that happens with growth in any area of life. You're going to do it. You're going to have difficulty. You're going to experience pain. And in the course of experiencing pain, you have two choices. One choice is to say, I quit, I'm not doing it again. And many people, that's what they do. Now, of course, a lot of you would say, well, I'm not a quitter, I don't quit. But how does it manifest itself? What it does is that people say, well, that person's ideas didn't work for me. I just have to find the right idea that works for me. And so they stop one idea, then they look for the next thing to try. But you see, the other option that you can take is to pursue it consistently and to say, look, it didn't work out right this first time. I'm going to give it another try, because this is truth. I'm practicing truth. And if it is truth, then it's also going to deliver for me at some point in time. And you go back there, you do it again. It's going to be difficult, but guess what? You already experienced the pain before. So bearing the pain that you're experiencing the second time around is a little bit easier, right? You do it the third time, you do it the fourth time, and you're just consistently doing it, do it. You get to a point where you just don't feel the pain anymore. Then you start seeing the results. Then you start seeing the muscles come out. They start taking shape. You find out that you're stronger. You can increase the weights that you're pushing, and you keep adding more, and you continue to grow that way. That's exactly how growth works. So with all the ideas that I'm sharing with you today, what you've heard and that you're going to listen to as a part of this conference, or maybe you've heard before, you've taken in classes before, all of those things are important. Now, you definitely should document them, write them down so you can review them, you can think about them again, and you can start practicing them. And despite any difficulty, despite any challenge that you might face at any point in time, it's okay for you to say, look, I'm going to keep at it. I'm going to keep going. I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep practicing these things. So let's talk about some of the things or some of the areas where you have to master so that you can ultimately, pardon me, my let's talk about some of the areas that you have to master so that you can actually grow and you can actually position yourself for appropriate wealth creation. So the first thing that I have here is strong goals. You have to master the art of strong goals. Now, this is a very, very interesting one, because I'm sure you probably heard this in every seminar about anything that you want to achieve, is that you have to have a goal and you have to set a goal. But here's the thing. That's not the complete story, because you can set a goal, but setting a goal by itself is not all that's required. You have to learn how to achieve that goal. You have to master achieving that goal. But the reality is many people don't have goals for their lives, for their businesses, for their finances, for impact, for how they want to create value. Many people don't have those, right? But you have to have that goal. You have to be able to articulate that goal in a manner that is clear to you, first of all, as an individual, right? Sometimes some people say things like, well, I want to grow. It's not specific, it's not measurable. What does that mean? So you have to clarify. If you're a business owner, you have to say to yourself, what does it mean for me to say I want to grow? What does I want to grow mean? What does growth look like for you in your personal life? What does growth look like for you in your finances? What does growth look like for you? What is wealth for you at this level, right? You don't start out necessarily saying, I want to have $10 million. You can have that as a big goal. And by the way, if you do have that as a goal, let it be clear to you, first of all. But you say to yourself, like, what is the first step that I need to, that I need to do? So that's number one. have the goal, clarify the goal for yourself, internalize the goal. That's the other part that's important, right? Because many people, even if they've taken the step to actually write the goal down and document the goal, the problem oftentimes is that they don't internalize it for themselves. So you meet them in 3 months' time and you ask them about the goal, they've forgotten about it or they've forgotten the details about the goal. So it's important for you to internalize it. And internalizing it means that you're consistently thinking about it. You're consistently talking about it, not necessarily to a lot of people, but at least to yourself, right? You're meditating on it. You're reviewing it constantly and consistently so that it's clear. Then you're also expanding what that goal really means on the inside of you. That's what it means to internalize it. So if I talk about wanting to grow, right, I'm saying to myself, what does growth look like? Right? What does growth require? Does it mean that I have to read more books? Does it mean that I have to make more calls, be deliberate about building more relationships? Does it mean that I have to start looking for people to hire, start talking to people that I can partner with in a venture? Does it mean that I have to try out new opportunities? And you start visualizing these things and expanding it within your consciousness. You're internalizing it, you're growing it, you're clarifying it. You see, because what you see is what you're going to walk towards. What you have clarified on the inside of you is what you can actually really score. And many times people don't have that clearly on the inside of them. People don't even have a picture on the inside of them, right? And I'll leave you with this thought. I'll drop this thought over here that I think is important. Many times what you're really looking for and what would help you get to where you need to be at in life is already on the inside of you. But in the process of internalizing that goal, in the process of meditating on that goal, of nurturing that goal, what happens is that you start becoming aware of possibilities around that goal. Take, for example, how many of you have said to yourself, like, maybe, if you're, let's use your car. You say you want to buy a car and you're like, I want to buy this car. It's a Toyota Camry. It's this special color. It's not common at all. And you buy the car, not even before you even buy the car, but by saying that and you're looking for the car, you eventually find one. You know what tends to happen? As you start driving around, you're like, seeing so many people with that exact car that you thought was a rare find. Or it might be like an outfit, you have a fabric or you have an outfit that you saw at the store. You're like, oh my goodness, this is so unique. No one has it, I'm buying it. But the moment you do that, you make that decision, you buy it and you go around, you're like, wow, I saw a person at this party wearing this. I saw a person on television wearing this. And that's exactly what happens with our goals. See, when you actually clarify the goal on the inside of you, when you actually build a goal on the inside of you, you start seeing the opportunities that will bring that goal into reality in your life. The last thing I will say as it pertains to having strong goals or mastering the art of strong goals as a behavior is that you have to nurture that goal. And then you have to seek relevant information. So oftentimes people set a goal, but they're not seeking information on how to attain to that goal. And that means I have to read, take seminars, and talk to people. So, talk to people who look like have made progress in that particular area and ask them questions. Because in the pursuit of that, you're getting relevant information. You're attracting the right things on the inside of you that will help you to attain to that goal. So mastering strong goals is important here. The second thing I'll talk about here is mastering your appetite. Now, I'm not talking about food, right? But appetite in its broad sense is very, very important as you think about wealth creation here in life. And what that means is if you think about it from a natural perspective, people think that you have to eat a lot. People say, oh, you have to eat 3 square meals. Oh, you have to eat breakfast. Oh, you have to do this. Oh, you have to do that. Look, the reality is that your body doesn't need as much food as you think it needs. Many times when you think you're hungry, what really is happening is your body is just trained to the routine of you consistently eating. And what happens is that if you say to yourself, well, no, I'm not going to eat for the entire day. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. The next day comes around, you're fine. You don't need to eat as much as you eat. And what I'm trying to communicate to you here is this. Oftentimes, we think we want something so bad. We think we desire something so bad. And so therefore, that desire leads us to start making certain decisions, right? And now, if we're talking about behavior for wealth creation, we're looking for ways to optimize our actions so that we're not necessarily responding to the stimuli around us, but instead, we are responding to the stimuli that gets us to where it is that we ultimately set for ourselves as a goal in life. But if there's an appetite that you have that you're not controlling and you're not able to master, you're going to be responding to everything, right? Even if you think about it, food, naturally speaking, right? A lot of people who you see are overweight. A lot of people, some people have medical conditions, understandable. But a lot of people who are overweight, it is because everything they see, they eat. And many times people are overweight in their ability to pursue and achieve their goals and to actually create wealth because there's a lot of fat around them. There's so many things. They're drawn to this, they're drawn to that. They don't know how to say no to certain things. They've not learned how to differentiate between a want and a need, right? That's the mastery of appetite. So that act of self-discipline, that act of being able to delay gratification, to say to yourself that I may really want this thing, but I don't necessarily need it. I may really want this, and I don't necessarily need it. Now, the other thought I'll leave you here with is think about your money as you think about mastering your appetite. Think about your money as a messenger. Think about your time as a messenger. So how you spend it per time or how you consume it in the moment is a determinant of what happens in the future. So if we talk about mastering your appetite, you might take $1 or a naira or a pound or a euro, and you may go spend it on something right now for consumption. The cost of that thing is far beyond the consumption of what you consumed at that moment. It's also the cost of the opportunity that it could have created for you in the future. Now, if you start assessing everything in life that way, you become more conscious about the choices that you're making. So you're saying to yourself, like, can I master my appetite around this thing? Can I think through what I really say I want? Do I really want it? Or can I take my time and can I take my money and can I do something else with it that creates an opportunity for me in the future? See, because in creating wealth, there is an act of self-discipline that is very, very important in creating wealth. So whether you're a business owner, the same thing applies here. You're asking yourself, I have resources, I have human resources, I have time resources, I have financial resources. I may think I want something for my business. I may think I want an opportunity. I may think I want this or I want that. But all of these things come at a cost because if I pursue this opportunity, then I'm neglecting another opportunity. There's a cost for that. And I need to ask myself the question, do I really want everything that's presented before me? The next thing I will say we have to master is the art of staying focused, right? And it's a good segue from the previous point, right? And the reason why this is important is because you have to ask yourself, what if I decide to divert my attention to something else? Number one, that is a drain on resources. Number two, I need to ask myself, in doing so, do I have an edge above the other person? Can I do this better than someone else? I'll give you a personal example. So just last week, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's wealthy, he's a business owner, has sold a company, has done very well. And we're having a conversation about some things that I was working on personally from a business standpoint. And we were just chit-chatting about what types of opportunities is he looking at, etc. And I brought up an idea that a lot of people around me have been talking about, very good money that people are making in it. I have the money to actually make the investment in this opportunity. And he looked at me and he said, why would you do it? Why don't you focus on what you have going on right now? And I said to him that, well, it's good returns and, it'd be good passive income. He said, it doesn't matter. I was like, what do you mean by it doesn't matter? Like, this is good earnings potential. This is good return potential. He said, look, all that's going to be to you is it's going to be a distraction. I was like, wow. And he said this to me. He said, when I started my company, he said, I started with 3 different things that I was doing. They seemed related. He said, but the other 2 failed. And the one that succeeded was the one that succeeded. And it's like, I would have done much better in that business if I was focused on that one business versus being distracted with a bunch of opportunities that were around me. And I think that was very instructive for me personally. And I would say it's probably instructive for you as well. Is that as you think about things that are around you, you have to ask yourself the question, how focused am I? Have I, as an individual, mastered the art of staying focused? Because not only do you need to be focused with your time, focused with your money, focused with your goal, focused on your pursuit, you have to also be focused in your determination to create wealth. So whether you're a person who's investing, or you're a person who's working on a job, or you're a person who's starting a business, or you're an entrepreneur, etc., you have to stay focused. Even from a business strategy standpoint, have you ever wondered why some companies don't just do everything, but they focus on certain markets, focus on certain customers, they focus on certain strategies, they focus on certain products, etc.? Because for them to deviate to a different market, a different customer profile, etc., they have to ask themselves the question, can I be better than my competitor in doing this? And what I'm saying to you is that we all carry value on the inside. We all carry something on the inside of us. And you have to align your goals to the potential that you have within you. And you have to be focused in your pursuit to develop yourself and to unlock that potential on the inside of you. When opportunities come around, they may seem like really, really good opportunities, right? But never put yourself in a situation where you'd be distracted or where you would lose focus on what's really important, right? And this requires a very, very conscious action, right? Because it's not something that's easy to do. It's something that, requires a lot of effort and self-awareness as well, right? Because I have to pause and I have to think about every opportunity that comes my way. And I have to ask myself, does this align with the goal, my stated goal, my articulated goal, my clarified goal? And if it doesn't align with it, it doesn't matter how great of an opportunity it looks. And that's where the difficulty comes. It doesn't matter how great and how lovely of an opportunity it looks like. The question is, am I focused? Now, another dimension to this that's very important is you might let an opportunity go and you might look very stupid. What you focused on might actually not do as well as the other opportunity that you let go. But the reality is that if you're focused on something, you're going to learn a lesson that anyone else who's coming into that circumstance would not be able to match you. You know why? Because you already went through that. You've already seen that before. You've already experienced that loss. You've already experienced that pain. And that gives you institutional knowledge for you to have an edge above anybody else who's trying to enter into your space. So focus is very, very important. You have to master the art of staying focused. And this mastery is something you can practice in very, very simple things. If you've dedicated time, for example, to say, this is my time to read, well, make sure you're spending that time reading. If somebody calls you and the person has like very good, a gist for you, you have to say, hey, can I call you back in about 30 minutes? Why? Because this is my time to read. If you allocated time to exercise, make sure you're spending the time exercising, no matter what happens. Somebody may call you and say, hey, there's a great party that we're going for on Saturday. You want to come to that? No, Saturday is my day to train my mind, to spend some time meditating and to exercise. It's practicing that discipline on a daily basis, on a consistent basis, in the very little things is what would help you as you continue to grow and as you continue to develop yourself and prepare yourself for wealth creation. The other thing that I'll say that you have to master is the art of continuous learning. Now, continuous learning is one that is, again, culturally, there are a lot of people who are out there who, whether it's out of boredom, whether it's out of, availability of information all over the place, people are always reading something, people are always learning something. But this learning that I'm talking about has to be focused learning. If you have a stated goal, whatever you are learning has to revolve around you being able to be more proficient in that area of potential or in that area of skill that is valuable onto you as it pertains to wealth creation. And I'm not sure I said this. Let me say this real quickly for the benefit of us all. So I talked about the financial freedom aspect. and I talked about the impact aspect or the purposeful living aspect as two dimensions that intersect and ultimately, create wealth based on my perspective and my view of life, right? So as a result of that, there are certain things that you're going to be doing to create the finances, and there are certain things that you're going to be doing to make an impact in life. Now, all of that is really value creation. I can be creating value that's being exchanged for money, or I can be creating value that is being exchanged for recognition or for permission from people. That's ultimately the idea of leadership, is that I've added and contributed to the lives of people that they give me permission to lead them, right? So it's value creation. So everything that I'm talking about right now is focused on value creation, and it applies whether you are a leader in an organization, it applies in investing, it applies in starting a business, starting an enterprise, running an enterprise, etc. It all applies, or managing an enterprise. It all applies. So I just wanted to put that out there as what undergirds everything that I'm saying. So that's my point on learning, right? Learning has to do three things, I think, maybe more. Number one, learning has to help you with your proficiency. So is what I'm learning making me better at what it is that I'm actually working towards? Now, again, if you start with the first thing that I talked about, as you think about your goals, I talked about you have to expand what that goal means on the inside of you, right? So say, for example, you have a goal to lead a large organization, right? You have to think through. So just to make it practical for us here, you have to say to yourself, what is it required for me to actually get to that executive level in this organization? And number one, you have to know how to do the job that you have been assigned to do. But that's not all. So doing the job by itself is not all that you need to know. You have to know how to network with people. How do I interact with people in different aspects of the organization? How do I understand their needs? How do I provide benefits to them? You have to learn that. So that's part of that goal, the main goal, which is to be an executive in that organization. You have to understand what are the different experiences and skill sets that are required for that particular executive role. And once I know those things, I have to find out how do I get them. Number four, you have to learn how to communicate the value within the organization so people can actually recognize that you're a true candidate for that position. It's still part of that goal. Number five is that you have to learn how to manage people, because if you're talking about wanting to be a leader in an organization, then you're ultimately going to have to manage people. So how do I manage difficult people? How do I manage people who like me? How do I manage difficult circumstances? All of these things are all part of your goal. You have to also learn how to communicate a vision, because if you're sitting in the C-suite, a lot of your work is not the grunt work, but it is selling an idea. It's communicating an idea. It's coalescing people around that idea so they can go out and they can actually do something. So even though you state a goal as simple as I want to be an executive in my organization, you have to think through these 5, 6 different dimensions, and I bet you there are probably many more. But your learning has to be focused around becoming proficient in all of these different areas. So you're increasing your proficiency in all of these different areas. Whatever the goal is, it doesn't matter. So that's number one, focus and continuous learning around that. And learning also has to inspire you, right? Because you see, we don't live and run on inspiration alone, because if you did that, you wouldn't make any progress in life. But one of the ways you can continue fueling your passion or fueling your inspiration, for example, is by making sure you're gathering the right information that's challenging you to action. Again, we're talking about how we respond to stimuli. Instead of you allowing your environment stimulate you, you can create the environment around you that stimulates you towards the goal that you so desire and the place that you so desire to end up in life. And one of the ways that that happens is by you consistently inspiring yourself by continuous learning. So you need a learning system that propagates you towards that goal, or propagates you towards that vision, and propagates you towards that place in life. The last thing I want to say here that you have to master, and there are probably very many more, but staying with 5 for this session here, is you have to master the art of selling. Now, you're probably thinking, how is selling important in wealth creation? No, I heard someone say something to me one time that I thought was very important. He said, every job in life ultimately ends up being a sales job. Let's pause and think about that. Every job in life ends up being a sales job. So one of the skills that you can learn early on in life is the art of selling. You see, because when you think about life, number one, for example, if you create value, which what we said is important for everything we're talking about, you have to know how to capture value as well. So creating value is, it's like me making a product, but the way I capture value is by price or is by influence. Is I can put that value out and people can take that value, then they give me something in exchange for it. So many times people have value, but they've not learned how to sell that value. So people aren't, benefiting from the value that you have created. So you have to learn how to sell what it is that's on the inside of you. You have to learn to sell your value proposition. You have to learn to sell the benefit of what you have to offer, whether this is in an organization that you're working at, whether this is, whether you're trying to raise money for a business or you're trying to sell a customer on something. So you have to transform your value and interpret it and communicate it in a language that the customer. So in any situation, you have to be thinking, in any interaction, is this person a customer as it pertains to my journey in wealth creation? So you have to learn how to communicate and articulate that value in a language that the customer understands, so that that person gives you something in exchange for the value that you have created. Thinking finances and thinking purpose. In the case of purpose, the currency that I'm getting in exchange for the value I've created is permission. It's leadership permission, it's influence over that person. In the case of money, when I've created something, financials, I've created something, I'm collecting money for the value that I have created. And that's how you consistently have to think about life. So you have to learn to sell your ideas. A president of a nation is selling the people on the change that they're making. A CEO of an organization is selling his or her employees and management team and board members on the vision that this person has. A manager has to sell the team on the vision on what it is that they're trying to accomplish, what it is that they're trying to do. A parent has to sell their children on certain value systems. A pastor has to sell the congregation on the truth about the message that he or she is preaching at church. So every job, it doesn't matter. If you think about any job in an organization, it starts out technical. Even think about something as technical as a medical profession. You may start out as the surgeon who's, cutting people open and doing surgeries, etc. But if you want to rise up to the peak of your career in that practice, you're not necessarily going to end up being the best surgeon. In a sense, you become a very good surgeon, but then you become a person who is administering over multiple surgeons. So you might do one or two surgeries, here and there, but your biggest work is in making sure all the other surgeons who work in your organization are actually consistently doing what it is that your organization stands for. And the way you get them to think that way is by selling them on the ideas that you have created that you want them to stand for. I'm going to pause right now. That's really all I have. I can keep talking, but perhaps there are, a handful of questions. I'd probably like to use the remaining 5 or so minutes of my time to take questions from people. So I think, I don't know if maybe people can
thank you
put them in
very
like
much,
the chat.
Mr. Moyo. It's been a great session with you so far. I was just exclaiming, wow, 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 light bulb moments. And we really appreciate you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, so leaders, please, if there are questions, I would like to take them now before we close for tonight. Please use the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and ask your question quickly.
Yep.
Quickly.
I'm
Let's
going
also
through
appreciate Mr. Moyo in the chat box. It's been amazing, really. It's been amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Glad you had me. I'm going through the chat right now. just to see if there are any questions that are coming. I appreciate all the comments. Welcome, welcome.
Okay, so I have a question, Mr. Moyo.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I've really learned a lot from the things you've shared. They are really profound and insightful. But then when you talked about mastering your appetite, I'm sure some people were like, okay, you're coming for them concerning the food. And so my question is centered around that area, sort of. I want to hear from you. What's your advice for someone that is still stuck up in survival? And the person has heard all of the things you said, and the person is like, okay, I really want to create wealth in a sustainable way, but then I can't really think about it because some basic things in my life are not available yet. So how can someone break free from that?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question, and it's a very powerful question. I think the starting point, like I said, is from self-awareness, right? Like you rightly said, and I think it's also a step in self-awareness, is that if you figure out that my current state is survival, that is an immense realization of one's current state. But the reality is many people aren't that aware of that state of mind. And so you start there and you ask yourself the question, what do I really need for survival? And you sort of hit on it, because you talked about the appetite thing. Some people think, if we use the food thing, for example, some people think I have to eat 3 times a day to survive. So many times people have a distorted perspective of what it really requires for them to survive. But if you're really conscious about it, you realize that, no, I don't really need to eat 3 meals a day to survive. And I'm using food just because it's a relatable example. But you start and you say to yourself, I've constantly been eating 3. Can I survive with 1 meal? And oftentimes the answer is yes, I can survive with 1 good meal. And you start from there, and then you can now ask yourself the question, okay, now that I understand what I need to survive, right? How can I, deal with my current resources to make sure that I'm making progress in all of these different areas? So, it sounds simple, but at the same time, I'm very sensitive to the premise of your question here. I'm not downplaying the importance here, but I'm saying the starting point is to really honestly assess what it is that you do require to survive. Once you then find out what it is that you require to survive, then you can pivot and then say, okay, now that I know that I really don't need XYZ to survive, but I just need just a little bit here, then what else can I do? What else can I pay attention to so that I can continue to pursue growth and wealth creation in different areas of my life? I'm going to go back into the chat again just to see what's out there.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much. You really answered the question. I would go and suck out the juice from the answer. Leaders, please, if you have more questions, Mr. Moyo is available to answer our questions.
Yep, I think I have about 2 or 3 more minutes. So.
Okay, so when we were talking about mastering learning, mastering focus, you mentioned learning should do these 3 things for you, but you mentioned only 2. So I want to
nice pick up on that. I think I'm trying to decide if I actually had 3 or if I forgot the 3rd thing, right? But yeah, so inspiration for sure is one. Improved proficiency is the second thing it has to do for you as well. Oh, number 3, yes, creating awareness is what learning does. So actually, let me talk about that a little bit more. Let me talk about that a little bit more. So yes, the 3rd thing is learning creates awareness, right? It goes back to that point, it sort of goes back to the initial point around setting your goal. When you start learning about something, you become aware of the opportunities that are around you, regarding that particular topic or that area of learning. See, because you don't know what you don't know, right? But when knowledge begins to be introduced into a particular situation, you start seeing your ignorance in that particular situation. Does that make sense? You start seeing what you don't know, and based off of you then becoming more aware of your ignorance, you're then more deliberate about correcting for your, for your ignorance in certain situations. So that's the third thing knowledge would do for you. Now, the other thing I didn't say, which I'm glad you brought this up again, is that learning is not valuable by itself. In terms of collecting information in itself is not valuable. It is the application of that information that is valuable. So learning happens within the context of application, not in gathering the knowledge itself. I'm going to repeat that. Learning happens within the context of application, but not in the gathering of the information itself. See, because you can read a book. I found that there are books that I've read. When I read it again, when I'm in that particular situation that book is addressing, I learn a whole lot more. Because then you're taking the information and you're applying it in that particular situation. So when we're talking about learning here, when I'm talking about learning here, the encouragement and the challenge to you, including this session here, is don't just gather the information, but go out there and do what it is that I'm talking about. Start practicing it. You see, because when you do it, you start seeing what you know and what you don't know. What you know is tested by what you produce from that knowledge. So if you tell me you know how to make money because you've taken a class on how to make money, or you know how to do, whatever because you've taken a class, I have to be able to see the result from what it is that you're doing with that information. But if there isn't anything that I can point to that's a product of the knowledge that you said you've acquired, then you really haven't learned anything. Okay, maybe I'll take one more question and then I'll sign off.
Wow, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Should I say I'm filled with all of the things you've said. It's really, really profound, because now that we are in the age of we're in the knowledge era, information flying in here and there, we get to see and know things that we've not known before. But then we can get stuck in that place of amassing knowledge without really doing something. I like the fact that you said,
or more, you can get deceived because of so much information. You think you know so much. So people think they know so much, but you're like, okay, where's the result of your knowledge?
True, so true, really. So I see that if I have not applied what I claim to have learned, then learning has not happened.
That's right.
So profound. So that's like the test, the litmus test for whatsoever you say you've learned, or for any knowledge you think that, okay, I've just learned something new, but then it's in your head and you've not worked it out. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Let me check.
Ibrahim has a question.
Yes. He says, can you dwell more on seeing the world as your family as it relates to wealth creation? I think that was mentioned that.
So that's a good, someone picked that up. So I like that. So, what I mean by that is developing an attitude of compassion and love for humanity, broadly speaking. Oftentimes, people tend to pursue growth and development, first of all, for themselves. People are looking to make more money for themselves, which is a very selfish way to think about your pursuit. Now, some people, in order to, make it more palatable, say, oh yeah, I'm thinking about my family. I want to create a better life for myself and for my family. Well, that is good, right? But I think that is very narrow, right? I believe that human life is beyond just me or my individual family. Human life has the impact on society and community, which is exactly why, as a people, we live in communities. We want society to be better. We all have this thing on the inside of us that is looking for organizing society in a manner that is better for us as individuals and also for the collective. No one ever wants a situation where, all I care about is just myself. Now, think about this. If I organized society and everything I did and every decision I made was to optimize the benefits for myself and for my family, I don't want to live in that community. But I want to live in a community where there's security around everyone around, because I know everyone has a common interest, my best interest at heart, etc. So now that you can start expanding that idea, and it is an idealistic idea to think that the entire world is that family or that community that I'm trying to transform. But I think that that's the goal that we should carry deep on the inside of us. It is, altruistic at its highest form, but it's probably unattainable by any one individual. But think about the people who've done great things. If you think about a person like Bill Gates, who said, I want a personal computer in every home in the world. That's the idea. It's the idea of providing benefits to every single person. I mean, think about how much better our lives are today because there's a personal computer in your home. So you start thinking about it that way, you start getting the ability to do more. You think about people who say, I want, to eradicate poverty in the world. And the way I want to do it is I want to figure out a way that every single person has a job. Or somebody who says, I want to eradicate hunger. So therefore, instead of a seed taking 6 months or 1 year to produce fruit, I'm creating a seed that would be able to produce fruit in 3 weeks or in 3 months. All of these things are noble ideas that have come from a heart of wanting to impact and just benefit the entire world. Now, it's a challenge that can work for any one of us. We can say to ourselves that, look, I'm ultimately doing this, but beyond my personal benefits, beyond my family's personal benefits, I want every single person to benefit from this. I, as a speaker in this conference, I have a desire, the way you feel right now, the value that you feel that I've provided for you, I want to be able to get that message to every single person in the world. I want to be able to share these ideas. I want to see everyone living a life that's purposeful and also having the freedom to choose and to love each other and, and to be able to just progress society that way. I desire that. How do I get there? I don't know. I'm just going to keep pushing, but it's a desire that's burning on the inside of me. And I'm going to keep on practicing all these principles that we're talking about. I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to master my appetite. I'm going to make a clear goal about how I do these things. I'm going to, stay focused on what it is that I'm doing, focus on the topic, focus on my messaging, etc. And the more I do that, my expectation is that the spectrum of my influence would continue to broaden and continue to spread, and the audience would also continue to increase. Well, I think that's probably it for now, as it pertains to my time. I want to say thank you all for having me today. I trust that you all have been impacted by everything that I've said. And what I'll encourage you all to find me on LinkedIn, find me on Instagram, and follow me either at Moyo Mamora on Instagram. I share some of these thoughts and some of these ideas there as well. You can also find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter as well. So it's at Moyo, Moyo Mamora, all one word, on Instagram. Would love to connect with you all there. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. We are really grateful. I'm sure we've had many light bulb moments, and we are going to do a lot of things with what you've said, not just hear you, but would go and act as doers of what you've said. Thank you so much. We're grateful.
Thank you. All right. Well, bye for now.
All right, sir. Thank you, leaders, for today. It's a wrap for Head Start 2022 Day 1. See you tomorrow. Come early. Thank you.